My name is Tiffany Gallagher, and I chose William James to do my paper and presentation over, and I focused on his theories of consciousness, habit, and emotion. William James was born into a unique family in 1842. His father had actually come upon a large sum of money and therefore focused on raising his 5 kids with the highest level of education. That being said, James was very well educated and very well versed. He particularly was noted on his fluency in 6 different languages by the time he was in his late teenage years. Like every other typical teenager, he really struggled with what he wanted to do with his life. So he originally started a career in the arts, of which he was very successful. However, he did leave his career in the arts, and he chose to pursue his psychological studies. Many people would say that James carried his art over into a study of psychology when looking at his different theories and his backgrounds. And James went to Harvard and then married his wife, a 29-year-old teacher in Boston, and he wrote one of the most renowned psychology books that is still used in classical psychology today. Within the last century, the main focus for psychological study has been that of experience and consciousness. And for centuries, people believed that the mind was made up of boxes or compartments, and that each box would fit together to make this one large unit, which we would consider the mind. So think Legos. You have thousands of Legos that create one large castle, so they join together. This is what people thought of the human mind. James, on the other hand, did not believe in this theory. He believed that consciousness was the exact opposite of that, really. It was not limited to a box or boxes joined together. It couldn't be compartmentalized. It was nothing jointed. It flowed, which brought upon his famous metaphor of consciousness being like a river or stream. It flowed, ebbed, continued, which is where we got the term a conscious through stream of thought, or a stream of consciousness, was from this metaphor. James believed that consciousness was very much like the arts. He used an illustration of a painter painting his first charcoal sketch upon his canvas. And like every painter and their work of art being unique to that person, he believed consciousness was much like that. And each work of art, in its unique, different abilities, had 5 characteristics. The first being that it was personal. It's personal to each individual. It's personalized to what their life is about and what their thoughts are about. He also believed that it was constantly changing. It kept going. It never took the same route. It never revisited the same areas. And it was continuous. It didn't stop. It didn't discontinue. It kept going, kept flowing, much like that river metaphor that he used before. He also believed that in that continuous nature, it was selective. It selected what it needed to focus on more intently than what normal stream of consciousness is. And he also noted that the 5th characteristic was that it was active. It's always seeking that endpoint. It doesn't stop. It doesn't cease to exist. Consciousness is always there. In addition to this, James believed that there was a component and an aspect of consciousness called habit. He believed that habit occurred more or less by default. Now, people in general have a very fine and specific thought about habit. They can be good, they can be bad, but they're usually things that are developed. James, on the other hand, said no, they don't really develop naturally. They happen by default, and they actually have a job. A habit has several jobs, and the first one of those is to enable consciousness to focus attention on more important problems like survival, for instance. So it allows you, your habits keep you going. So for example, your alarm goes off at 7, you brush your teeth, you take a shower, you get dressed, you go to work, you do what you do at your job. Those are all parts of habit. And while habit can take over and happen by default, it allows consciousness to focus on things that need more attention. He also believed that habit served as somewhat of a roadmap for people in their daily lives. So let's say he uses a great example of non-desirable jobs. So let's take a stall mucker, for example. A stall mucker probably has thought at some point in his life, I really wish I wasn't shoveling muck all day, every day. But habit, because it keeps us going, is what in turn keeps a person on track. He didn't have much to say about bad habits. He left that essentially to the fact that they happen by default. But James did believe that good habits could be developed, and he thought that they could happen in three ways, basically, three key steps to creating a good habit. And the first is to make a public declaration or a pledge. We all say accountability is key. So for example, if you are taking a break from social media, what's the first thing you do? You post a status on social media letting people know that you aren't going to be there for a while. They keep you accountable. You don't want to log on 30 minutes later after you said you're giving it up. The second thing he said that was important about creating a good habit is that you can't give it up until it's rooted in your life. So we've all heard the saying, it takes 21 days to make or break a habit. Now James didn't label it as 21 days, but he did say you can't give it up until it's rooted in your life. It needs to stick. And the last thing he said was that you need to find ways to give your habit a precedence in your daily life, meaning that you need to give yourself as many opportunities as possible to enforce that habit. So if your good habit is to walk more than you drive, when you go to the grocery store, you park in the farthest parking spot, you walk to the door, and you walk back. You do things that make that habit come to the forefront. And in doing so, you develop good habits that are not just part of the habits that are done senselessly, that happen on an automatic basis. That was really the differentiation for James in that area. I think his third most important theory was his theory on emotion. And so we all understand emotions, happiness, sadness, anxiety, all of those things that we quantify as this feeling. Most people believe emotion kind of goes like this. Something happens to you. So take, for example, a bear is chasing you. You feel an emotion like fear, for example, and then your body responds. It might sweat, it might shake, it might tremble, you might run. Whatever that body response is. If a bear ran towards me, I would probably run because I was afraid, right? Well, James flipped this. He said that it didn't happen like that. An event actually occurred, so a bear chases you and your body responds to it. So you tremble, you shake, you sweat, and then you feel an emotion, and that emotion that you are feeling is subsequent and given to you based on your bodily response to that event. So the bear chases me, I shake and tremble, I'm scared, then I run. It's a reaction after that. So my emotion comes after my initial bodily response. This is the opposite of what most people think, but James truly believed that emotion has to be brought upon by a specific bodily response. So for example, if we cry, we feel sadness. If we hit someone, we feel angry. If we tremble, we feel fear. Most people debated this. They said that that is impossible. How does your body differentiate that? And that's a good point. However, research today shows that there is some correlation there. But it's important to understand James's theory and what he is saying is happening. So the best example of this is using the example of a child. A child basically being chased by a terrifying dog. So a terrifying dog runs up to a small child and attempts to bite them. The child is going to react with a chemical body reaction. So their body is going to shake, it's going to sweat, it's going to do something. And then this reaction will then spark an emotion like fear, anxiety, whatever that emotion may be. So what he's saying is that your body response is technically a pre-emotion that allows your consciousness to process what has happened and then transmute a common emotion. So it really kind of makes sense there. Your body gives a pre-emotion or a cue to process what emotion you should be feeling. The research that has been done today that correlates this theory that an exact body response emutes an exact emotion goes a little something like this. People are saying that if you force your body to do something, it can be equated with an emotion. So if I tell you that you need to constantly smile, you are typically going to exude a positive emotion. Most people would say happiness. There is that direct correlation, which has been reached many, many years after James's theory that was originally thought to be untrue. All of these things are part of why William James is one of the greatest philosophers, or psychologists really, or a mixture of both, some would say. in our history. But I think one of the things that he says that is really true and really reflects in his thoughts and theories is that he said that psychology is a science of mental life, both of its phenomena and their condition. And I think that is absolutely apparent in what he says. And I think that is what resonates his theories to be so true and so impactful today.